program that we started back up last month. Erin enabled our YouTube channel with our program from last month, which was phenomenal about trail maintenance. And we also have some other pre-recorded programs from previous years. We're always looking for more topics. I've been involved with the FLTC for many years, and I became the program chairperson or the events chairperson, however you want to word it. And this is one of our events. We also host many other things. We have a Hike 101, we have the County Hike Series, we have Trails Days, we have Fall Weekend, and a few other things mixed in, like Founders Hikes. We are always looking for more people to help out. We're always looking for more volunteers. So if you have interest in the FLTC and you really enjoy hiking, reach out. You could just email volunteers at fingerlakestrails.org and let us know that you're interested in participating at a higher level, and you're not going to be abandoned. You're going to be helped along. You're going to be helping us, and we appreciate whatever you could do to help our organization. We plan on recording this, which I think you already hit record, Erin. Thumbs up. I think you did. So we're good with that. We are also looking, if you specifically want another topic, you want to know something more about hiking, we're here to educate people. It's a great platform. It's free. So if there's something that's been bugging you or irking you about hiking and you're like, man, I wish I knew a little more, and it could be any topic, whether it's first aid or mushrooms or trees, let us know, and we'll see what we could do about getting a presentation put together. Joining the FLTC is something we would like everyone to do. One of the things I love about being a member is getting a magazine. And, people are like, a magazine? Yeah, it really connects me with the FLTC. And I like to read about some of the end-to-end hikers. We have some nature stuff. We have some good information about hiking, stuff about what goes into actually getting our trails. Dave Newman does a phenomenal job with acquiring the land if we need to actually purchase land and what's all involved in that. And he does great articles. So please join the FLTC. It's not super expensive. Encourage your friends to do so. We have a wonderful network of people, and we want you all to make sure you join and your friends and family also join. So I'll turn it back to Erin, and I hope you enjoyed tonight's presentation with Joellen. She's fantastic.
Okay, so before we get started with the presentation, I just ask that everybody mute themselves, because sometimes background noise, it can be a little distracting and a bunch of crazy stuff could happen. So I think it's up to Joellen how she wants questions, but I typically like to wait till the end for people to ask questions. Joellen, if that's okay with you. And we also have the chat option too. So if you think of a question, you think you're going to forget it, just type it in the chat, and we'll make sure that we get to answer that. Okay, so Joellen has done this presentation for us before, and it's always been super popular. I see that it has many views on our YouTube channel. So we asked her to come back to talk about, we know them, we don't love them, ticks. Everybody wants to talk about ticks. My daughter, she just had Lyme's earlier this year. She's young, went through her quickly. We got it treated very quickly. So everybody has some story, I'm sure. And Joellen knows a lot about ticks. She calls herself the tick lady. So we couldn't get anybody better. She's going to tell all of her credentials because I'm going to butcher them. But take it away, Joellen.
All right. Well, let me share my screen here. So actually, I am going to say I did not dub myself the tick lady. That was other people telling me that. All right, so you're looking at the right screen? Okay, great. Thank you all for being here. This is such an amazingly important topic. I call this my credibility slide. I got my degree from natural resources from Cornell University, and from there I was able to go into environmental education, which was really my first love. And I got to tromp with kids and adults, and we got to go into the woods, and we would do sheltering, and we would cover ourselves with leaves. And I think back on those times and how naive we actually were, and how it's changed. It has definitely gotten worse over the years. I eventually joined the New York State Integrated Pest Management Program with Cornell University, which is a statewide appointment. I am actually based out of Albany County. And this allows me to still do environmental education. I get to talk to people about food, water, shelter, and space, and predation, and all of that, but just with a really different focus. I was telling some people earlier that sometimes I feel like I'm a professional downer. And with ticks, it's such a tightrope that I feel like I'm walking, that I want you to be concerned. I want you to protect yourself. But more importantly, I want you to go outside. Let's hit those trails and really enjoy ourselves. There is also a lot of misinformation about ticks that are out there. So today I'm going to give you a lot of science-based information with the hope that you will be able to go out and help to spread this information, because there's only so many people that I can reach myself. So part of that misinformation are people that are just doing their Google Scholar degrees and getting their information from there. So this is a picture of me in the woods, all bundled up and protected, and I am blowing mouse fur, trying to look for ticks on these small rodents. So I've put in the hours, I've done the work. So this, like I said, is my credibility slide. I just want to give a quick shout out to our funders. We did get money from the New York State Senate Task Force on Lyme and tick-borne diseases, which that committee actually doesn't exist anymore, but they led us on a path of getting regular funding that allowed us to create the Don't Get Tick New York campaign. So we, at that time, this was about 7 years ago, we looked to see what information was out there already. A lot of it was very bloody. It was hard to understand. There were conflicting recommendations, and some of it was just downright wrong. So we were able to create this campaign, hire a graphic designer, and you'll be seeing a lot of these images as we go through today. But mostly, we just wanted to make tick avoidance really easy to understand and accomplish. So what we're going to cover this evening is knowing your pests. You are going to learn more about ticks than you ever thought that you wanted to know, but it's important to know how they act so that you can understand why the recommendations that we're making are working. Then we're going to do prevention through integrated pest management, which is basically just thinking about the situation that you have in front of you and the different tactics that you can use to protect yourself. And then we'll spend some extra time at the end talking about proper removal of embedded ticks, because that's where a lot of the really dangerous information is. But mostly what we're going to be really focusing on today is that you do not want to get bitten by a tick. And I'm going to provide you with evidence to make that clear. So let's start with basic biology. One of these is
Joellen?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is anybody else experiencing like really choppy internet? Me and
Yes, we are as well.
okay.
Yeah,
Joellen, do you
she's
mind
a little
turning
too close to the microphone.
do you mind turning your camera off? Maybe that'll help the connection.
I can do that.
All right, let's see if that works.
All right. Did that make anything any better?
Yes.
Okay,
All right.
great. So if you could monitor the chat for me, Erin, I would appreciate it. One of these is a tick and one of these is not a tick. Which one is the tick on the left or is the tick on the right? What are people saying?
Like
Left.
Both?
left.
So it looks like
And left.
people are leaning towards the left. And it absolutely is. And so what made you think that this was a tick as compared to the other one on the right? What were some clues?
8 legs.
8 legs. That's a great one. Ticks are related to spiders. They're arachnids. They have 2 body parts. You have the really large what am I trying to say? Body, the abdomen, and then you have a teeny tiny head, and then you have ridiculously large mouth parts for the rest of the size of the body. When we're looking at this abdomen, we really want to think about that as a balloon filled with germs. It's just a good way of thinking about it and how we want to protect ourselves from it. This one that I just pointed up, this is what comes out of the egg. Also 2 body parts, big abdomen, not filled with germs yet, really tiny head, again, ridiculously large mouth parts, but only 6 legs. So if you find something on you and you have a pretty strong microscope and you see that it only has 6 legs, it can still be a tick. So this is just a quick clarification on that. The one on the right is actually a bed bug, which is an insect. It has 6 legs. It has 3 body parts. Both of these critters feed exclusively on blood, but they have very, very different lifestyles. The bed bug is going to spend very, very short periods of time on what it's feeding on. It's going to feed for a few minutes, and then it's going to scurry back into its hole, and it's going to come back and forth and do that. Because of that lifestyle, they, at this moment, and we'll knock on wood here, are not transmitting any diseases. They can transmit disease, they can carry diseases in them, but because of the way that they feed, they're not transmitting those diseases at this point. Very different from the tick, which just seems to be made to be able to carry these diseases and transfer them from one host to another. Across the world, there are about 1,000 different types of ticks. Most of those we're never going to see because they're very, very host specific. There are 3 in New York that we consider to be a human health threat because these are ones that are ready to feed on multiple types of animals, including ourselves. So if you are of a certain age, the American dog tick, also known as the wood tick, is the one we grew up with. They're big. They're found in tall grass areas. When they're fully engorged, they're about the size of a grape, and they really like to be feeding along the hairline. So that's where mostly we're going to find them when we find them on people. The Lone Star tick is a climate migrant. They have been moving north with our warming winters. Right now, they are firmly established on Long Island. They are moving up the Hudson Valley. There actually is a breeding population in Rochester, but for the most part, we're only finding these in downstate New York. So my recommendation to you is to stick to the trails in the Finger Lakes to avoid these guys. I'm not going to speak about them too much because what we really are most concerned about in this area is the black-legged tick, also known as the deer tick. At one time, they thought that they were 2 different species, and then they figured that they were actually the same species. And the way science works is they moved to the first named one. So that was why I'm going to be calling it the black-legged tick. We do have 2 relatively new arrivals in New York. The Asian longhorn tick was discovered in New Jersey in 2017. It has been discovered as far north as Rensselaer County. It hasn't really had west in New York yet, so I'm not going to be spending a lot of time talking about this one. And the Gulf Coast tick, which has pretty much only been found on Staten Island and on Long Island. They look very much like dog ticks. So if you find one that looks like a dog tick, but looks a little off, please let me know because we're trying to track how fast this one is going to spread through New York. But regardless of what kind of tick we're talking about, they're small. I do a lot of tabling, and I've done a lot of tabling this past year. And one of the things we really try to get across is just how tiny these things are. One of my favorite props is I have a poppy seed sized bagel that I have glued ticks onto, and people can look at it with a magnifying glass. That is the size of that second life stage, which is second from the left. That is the nymph, and that comes out around in the springtime. The one on the far left is that 6-legged larva. It almost fits in the groove of a fingerprint. So that's the first life stage. Second life stage is that poppy seed sized nymph. And then we have the larger male, and then the much larger female. She's larger because she needs to get a much larger blood meal so that she can fill up with blood and be able to sustain herself while also growing 2,000 eggs. If you are a black-legged tick or an Asian longhorn tick or a dog tick, Lone Star ticks will lay 8,000 eggs at a time. So those numbers can add up pretty quickly. I mentioned before that they feed on blood, and they feed only on blood, unlike mosquitoes, which are actually pollinators. They will feed on nectar and pollen at some points in their life. Ticks only feed on blood, and we call it an ectoparasite because ecto is outside. One of the myths is that ticks will actually burrow underneath the skin, and they don't. The only part that gets inserted is their mouth parts. They are incredibly sneaky animals, masters of stealth. So besides their tiny size, you can see those legs, and at the end are very tiny feet. And when they're crawling up people, they're actually walking on their toes. So people will say to me that, oh, I can always feel them crawling up me, so that keeps me safe. Please don't let that be your only method of keeping yourself safe from ticks, because yes, you can get lucky. They're going to trip over a hair and twang a nerve, but for the most part, you're not going to be able to feel these guys crawling up you. Those legs are made for crawling. They're not jumping. They are not flying. There are no wings there. And they're not using their energy to walk to the base of a tree, climb up the trunk, and walk out onto a branch and wait for something to walk underneath them. They don't have the senses to be able to recognize if something is underneath. What they do is what we call questing. So they will go up to the end of vegetation, and this typically happens at most 1.5 feet off of the ground, usually even lower, and they're hanging on with their back pairs of legs, and then those front legs are hanging out, and their sensory organ is actually there at the end of their leg, and they're trying to pick up movement, carbon dioxide, what I affectionately call feet smell, heat. And when they sense any of those things, they get ready. And then when you brush by, that's when they're going to grab on, and then they're going to crawl up. And they want to crawl up because they are aiming for the warm, dark, moist places of the body where they're going to hang out for up to a week feeding. So that is very important to recognize. They're starting very low, and then they crawl up. So when we get to talk about how we protect ourselves, keep that in mind. I will say that Lone Stars are a little bit different. They are more active hunters, and they will actually follow carbon dioxide plumes and chase you down. So this is my leg. I'm down on Long Island. I was actually looking for them, and you can see all those dots that are on my leg, between the front of my leg, the back of my leg, and the other leg. I probably had about 10,000 of these little larval Lone Star ticks on me. So thankfully I was fully protected, not allowing them to get on me and biting. What else do we know? Ticks are committed. They are going to be up to you for up to a week. So you can see from left to right, we've got the unfed tick. They attach, they start feeding, and they start to swell. So you can see that there's some swelling at 1.5 days. There's more swelling at day 2, day 3, day 4, and then there's that fully engorged tick at day 7. So one of the things I would love for doctors to stop asking is, how long was the tick attached? Now, thankfully, we have these charts, and I pulled this from an incredibly great resource, Tick Encounter, which is out of the University of Rhode Island, and they've been doing tick education better than or longer than anybody else, and better than a lot of people as well. It's just fantastic. So I use these charts to, if somebody brings me a tick, to try to guesstimate how long it's attached so that people can provide that information to your doctor. But honestly, people can't psychologically accept that it was on them for longer than a couple of hours. Before a presentation once, I had somebody bring me a tick, and I was like, oh, this one looks like it's been attached to you for at least 3 days. He said, no way, didn't happen, not possible. And then I got to this slide, and I heard a very, very bad word from the back of the audience. This is where we're able to provide the evidence. All right, what else do we know? What helps them to become incredibly committed is this mouth part. This is just a thing of beauty. It is basically a straw with backward barbs on it. This is how it can lock itself in. And then in addition to this incredible mouth part, we have the saliva that it spits into us. In that saliva, we have an antihistamine to stop you from getting an allergic reaction and then looking for it and scratching it and removing it. A painkiller, so you don't feel all this nonsense going on. There's a cementing agent that gets injected in just to really make sure it's locked in. There's about 1,000 different chemicals that are in tick saliva, most of which we don't know what it does. I can assure you, you don't want it in you. So this is a really good reason to not get bit by a tick. And I will point this out now, and we'll get into this more when we talk about tick removal, but this is how far it gets inserted into the body. That's it. The head part never gets inserted. So again, with all of these recommendations you'll hear about how to remove a tick, most of them are so that you don't leave the head behind. I can assure you, you can't leave the head behind because it never gets inserted. If the mouth part does break off as you are removing it, then it is no more dangerous than a splinter. So it doesn't increase your chances of getting these tick-borne diseases if the mouth part breaks off. Unfortunately, this is about the only good news that I have for you today. All right, let's move on. Ticks need the host that they're going to insert those mouth parts into. The black-legged ticks have about 27 that they really like in the New York area. In other parts of the country, they will feed on other things. Down south, they have black-legged ticks, but they have less of an issue with Lyme disease because the favorite host of the ticks down there are actually lizards. And the lizard bodies can't support the Lyme disease bacteria. Here, we've got lots of things that are supporting it, and their favorite hosts include chipmunks, which I have pictured here. They'll be on birds, they're on deer, they're on rabbits. I have on here 2 pictures of animals that have gotten reputations for being tick slaughterers. One is the opossum. And that came from a study that was done at the Millbrook Institute for Ecosystems Health, where they actually brought in a bunch of animals, made sure they didn't have any ticks on them, and then they put ticks on them to see what percentage of those ticks were going to be able to survive and move on to the next life stage. And the ticks that were placed on the possums did not do well at all. They did a lot of grooming of them. Unfortunately, we get out into the real world and the Asian longhorn tick shows up, And now we're trying to figure out what this thing does. So we're looking at animals in a way that we hadn't for a while. And now they're collecting possums out there, and they're got ticks all over them, black-legged ticks, Asian longhorn ticks. So basically that study showed that if you have a possum in a cage and it has nothing else to do, it's going to do a fantastic job of grooming itself, but it's not going to save the world. We're not going to, if we fill our woods with possums, unfortunately, it's just not going to do what we're hoping that they'll do. And I really, really wish I could tell you that this worked, but the same goes for guinea hens and for chickens. People will swear that they don't have ticks in their yards because of these guys. And that came about from research that was done in Africa, where they were looking at a tick that only fed on cattle. So when they released chickens in with the cattle, they ate a lot of ticks, made a huge difference, and really improved the health of the cattle because there were less ticks that were affecting them. The ticks that we're concerned about here in New York will get eaten by chickens, but they will also feed on chickens. And recent research has shown that if you have chickens, you will either, it will remain the status quo, you're not going to see a reduction in ticks, or you might even over a period of time see an increase in the amount of ticks that you have on the property. So don't get chickens for the sole purpose of trying to control tick populations. If you want chickens, get chickens. Get guinea hens if you hate your neighbors. But otherwise, don't get these as a way to protect yourself from getting bit by ticks. The two most important hosts when it comes to a lot of these tick-borne diseases, one is the white-footed mice. These guys love to be where people are. We provide them with plenty of food and shelter, and there's less predators and competition where we are. So it's very hard to get rid of them in your landscape. I can tell you how to keep them out of your house and what to do once they're in there, but out in the yard, they just love what we provide them way too much. So in New York, like 90% of these mice are infected with the Lyme disease pathogen, which does not affect their health, but it means that every tick that feeds on that mouse is going to get that Lyme disease pathogen from it. 50% of them can be infected with Lyme and other tick-borne diseases. So they really have a role to play in amplifying the number of ticks and the number of ticks that are carrying these diseases. And the other one is the white-tailed deer. And white-tailed deer are actually a dead-end species for Lyme disease. It is not going to proliferate in their body. If every one of those ticks that you can see on that white-tailed deer ear had Lyme disease and was pumping that into the deer body, the new tick that comes along is not going to get it back out of the deer body. It just doesn't survive. There's actually something in the serum that is not only going to kill the Lyme disease spirochete in the deer blood, but it backs up into the tick and it's going to wipe out the bacteria that is in the tick itself. What white-tailed deer do is they are responsible for a lot of ticks. When ticks feed on white-tailed deer blood, they can lay more eggs than if they feed on any other type of mammal. So one deer can be responsible for about 500,000 ticks every year. We like to think of deer as the cruise ships for these ticks. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet. The adults are more likely to be able to connect with a member of the opposite sex, so there's plenty of opportunity for a hookup. And these deer have very large ranges, so they are scattering the ticks. You know, they feed for 7 days and then they drop off. So the spreading of these ticks have mostly been because of our increases in populations of white-tailed deer. And then ticks have preferred habitats, and a lot of this has to do with their host preferred habitats. But black-legged ticks really needed to be about 85% humidity in order for them to thrive and be looking for something to feed on. So we're mostly going to be able to find them in the woods or along the edge of the woods. And we've actually done a few studies where we've looked at ticks on school grounds or in Christmas tree farms. And what we found is we found more along the edge of the woods than we did going out into the field, but even more than we did when we went into the woods themselves. So that edge habitat is quite risky. Lone Star ticks, Asian longhorn ticks, they're pretty much happy wherever they land. They can take those drier, sunnier conditions. And the American dog tick, this is where we get this idea that you're going to find ticks in tall grass. That is the favorite habitat of the American dog tick. So tall grass, American dog ticks, more wooded, shaded areas is where we're going to find the black-legged ticks. But I have found them in the middle of lawns. I have found them even in the middle of athletic fields. If they get dropped off of an animal until they dry out and die, we're going to continue to find them looking for something to feed on in those areas. And where are we going to find them? There were two studies that was done. One was in Connecticut, one was in Maryland, and they actually came up with basically the same results. Most people are going to pick up their ticks in their own backyards. And this is really surprising to a lot of people. Parks, and I think we can consider the trails that we're talking about to be a place where people are going to be picking up less ticks. Now, they didn't ask why. My particular theory is that if we're going to hit the trails, we're going to do things to protect ourselves from tick bites. Whereas if we're home and we want to go pick a tomato out of the garden, we're not thinking about ticks. So it puts us more at risk. It actually surprises me that the unknown is only a quarter of the population because these guys are so stealthy, because they are longer than we think. I'm a little skeptical of that 26% number. I think most people don't know where their tick came from. All right, I heard Peg talking to people about how we need help with the trail systems. And I would encourage you to really focus on invasive plants. Much research has gone into tying together infestations of especially Japanese barberry, but also multiflora rose and honeysuckle, where these just provide amazing light-footed mice habitat. They're usually thick clumps, so they're protected from predators. They've got berries on them, so there's a regular food source. If we're talking about barberry or multiflora rose, they also have the spiny stems, so adding even more protection for the mice. And that dense cover provides a more humid place, which makes the ticks very, very happy. So you can see the graph on the right, and it shows that where we have a heavy barberry stand, the numbers are much higher than if we had no barberry in there. The good news is if we go in and control for the barberry, we're getting that control number to be very close to no barberry number. And here's just another look at it. Barberry infested forest, the number of ticks that are carrying the disease that causes Lyme disease in a barberry infested forest compared to an uninfested forest. So this is a great place to put your efforts, is the control of invasive species. What else? Ticks are seasonal. So the female is going to lay her eggs in the spring, and then they're going to hatch out typically late July, early August, and then they're going to be looking for something to feed on. They're really tiny, almost fit in the groove of a fingerprint. They're not moving very far. They're waiting for things to come to them. Typically, this is going to be a small rodent, just by sheer numbers of things that are in these areas. So we got a chipmunk or a mice. It's going to feed on that. Because they're so tiny, they're only feeding for 3-4 days maybe. And then they're going to drop off, and then they're going to wait the rest of the summer, all of the fall, all of the winter, and then in the springtime, they're going to emerge as that poppy seed sized nymph. And then in the springtime, that poppy seed sized nymph is going to be looking for something to feed on. again, just based on sheer numbers, it's typically going to be a rodent. But in any of these life stages, it could be us or companion animals. They're going to feed. They're a little bit larger. They're going to feed for 3 to 5 days. They're going to drop off. They're going to wait the rest of the spring, all of the summer, and then going into the fall before they emerge as the adults. And I can say pretty confidently that they really got ratcheted up about 3 weeks ago. So now the adults are out there right now looking for something to feed on. And at this point, they are deliberately looking for something larger, because that female wants to be able to take in a lot of blood so that she can support herself and grow her eggs. And also it increases the chances that males and females are going to be able to hook up. They're going to, again, look for that larger animal. She's going to feed, she's going to drop off, and then she's going to wait the rest of the fall, all of the winter, and in the springtime, she's going to lay her eggs. So this is what the books say. This is reality. It is a hot mess. These guys are incredibly good at what they do. So as long as they don't get dehydrated, and dehydrated is their worst enemy, hot, dry conditions, if they don't find something to feed on, something doesn't wander by, they'll just wait and they will keep looking. So these adults that are active right now, if they don't find something to feed on, they will keep questing all through the winter time. And I have found them as late as the end of June, depending on the year. If it's a hot, dry spring, I'll see them drop off sooner. But if it's a cool, wet spring, that'll allow them to keep questing longer and longer. So if it is above 37 degrees, that seems to be the cutoff, you are at risk for getting a questing adult tick on you. I have found larvae, that teeny tiny thing that lives can fit in the groove of a fingerprint in May. So that was something that hatched out in July, and then it lasted through the rest of the summer, all of the winter, fall, winter, and in 9 months, it was still looking for something to feed on. It ended up in a bottle of alcohol. Poor thing. So there's really no time that you are going to be fully protected from ticks. The other tick species are more summer pests, especially the dog tick. This past spring, I got more complaints about dog ticks than I have in my previous 9 years working for Cornell. We're not quite sure what's going on there. So there's a lot of dog ticks, but then they kind of dropped off in the summertime. It's the black-legged ticks. They're around all year round. And having something feed on you for up to a week is bad enough, but they are also vectors. They're able to transmit these different diseases. For the most part, and there are exceptions, the larvae are going to hatch out without carrying any diseases. And then they're going to be looking for something to feed on. If what they feed on is carrying a disease, they're going to absorb that along with the blood, and they're going to carry that on to the next life stage. If the first one that they fed on didn't have a disease, well, the nymph is feeding again, and that's a second opportunity to feed on. Or if the first one had the disease and the second one didn't, now it's going to be transmitting the disease to the second host. So if the first host is a mouse, it's almost likely to be picking up Lyme disease and maybe some others as well. And then the adults, when the nymphs go, the diseases go on to the adult stage as well. So the adults are twice as likely to be carrying a disease as the nymphs because it's fed twice. But we consider the nymph to be the most dangerous life stage because it is active in the springtime before people are thinking about ticks. And it is the size of a poppy seed. And it's unlikely that you're accidentally going to find this in the warm, dark, moist places of the body, unless you're actively looking for it. And the data bears this out. So if we look at the timing of Lyme disease, it's a reportable disease. So this comes out of the Center for Disease Control. You can see that most people are going to get diagnosed with Lyme disease from the tick that bit them. They're going to get diagnosed in June or July from the tick that bit them in May or June. So it's that springtime poppy seed sized nymphs that we need to be the most concerned about. And those adults that are active right now, you can see that not that many people get diagnosed at this time of year. And my theory behind that is we've had a summer of dealing with ticks, so we're more aware. And also we're just wearing more clothes. It would be interesting to see if there was more of a blip in the fall of this year, because it's been so warm out. People are wearing less clothes because it feels like summer out there. But for the most part, we're wearing more clothes at this time of year. And it's not just Lyme disease. So the black-legged tick carries Lyme and anaplasmosis and babesiosis and Powassan virus and Borrelia miyamotoi and ehrlichiosis. Most of these are bacterial, Lyme, anaplasmosis, Borrelia miyamotoi, and ehrlichiosis. And the way this works is that it is in the gut of the tick and that goes dormant because that tick might not eat for 9 months. Once the tick starts feeding and that blood hits the gut, that's going to activate the bacteria. It's going to wake up. They're going to start to multiply. They're going to start to move through the tick body until it reaches the salivary glands, and then it gets pushed into our bodies. We don't know how long that takes. We can't know how long that takes because we're not doing these testing on people. So again, I really wish that doctors would not ask, how long has it been attached? Babesiosis is a parasite that gets into blood cells, very similar to malaria. So it is a very different treatment that needs to happen with that. Powassan virus is a virus. There is no cure for it other than supporting the body. And for people that develop symptoms, it's fatal 11% of the time. Powassan virus also lives throughout the entire tick body. So it's already in the salivary glands. So it can start being transmitted within minutes of being attached. So we have our first fatal tick-borne disease that can be transmitted in minutes. You really don't want to get bit by a tick. Powassan virus and Borrelia miyamotoi can both be transmitted from an infected female through the eggs, and that tiny 6-legged larva can be carrying these diseases. So these are just all things that we need to be concerned about. We just really don't want to get bit by a tick. The other ticks are carrying their own set of diseases. If I have it highlighted, this is brand new information since I last addressed this group in 2022. Bourbon virus has been found on Long Island. Rocky Mountain spotted fever and Powassan virus are two that have been discovered to be transmitted by Asian longhorn ticks in the lab. We haven't found it in the wild yet. Tuleria orientalis, also transmitted by Asian longhorn tick, is a cattle-borne disease, so less concern for our human health. We're very concerned about the health of cattle within New York. And now that we're testing ticks more often, it's recently been discovered that American dog ticks can also transmit Powassan virus. And then there are non-pathogenic things that can happen, such as tick paralysis, which is a reaction that some people will get to something in the saliva. We're not sure what it is. It's a paralysis that starts at the toes and it works its way up. And if not found and corrected, it can shut down the respiratory system. I'm letting you know this, it's pretty rare, but if this is something that you're aware of, look for the tick. The great thing about it is that if you find it, remove the tick, the symptoms immediately start to reverse. And then with the Lone Star tick, we have this carbohydrate called alpha-gal, and a much longer name. We're going to shorten it down to alpha-gal. And this is a carbohydrate that is found in every mammal except for primates, which we are. So it's injecting this thing that we're not used to. It's not normally a part of our body. It's getting injected right into our bloodstream. We can become sensitized to it. which means if we become sensitized, we can become allergic to red meat. So anytime that we eat any mammal meat from that time, we can start to have an allergic reaction. With every introduction of that, it gets worse and worse, anaphylactic shock and death being a possibility. Again, Lone Star ticks, just stay in the Finger Lakes area so that you don't get exposed to that. But this is a really great thing to talk to people about not wanting to get bit by a tick at all. It makes a great impression on young men, especially. I have young sons myself, and they're like, oh yeah, if I get Lyme disease, I'll just go on antibiotics. But the thought that they couldn't have a hamburger for the rest of their lives really made an impression on them. And it's just getting worse. So here we go. This is, again, data from the CDC. These are reports of Lyme disease cases, and each dot represents a diagnosis in the middle of the county. So 2021, 06, 2011, 2016, and 2019 was the last map that they've created. It is now throughout all of New York. I do want to point out that Massachusetts has not figured out Lyme disease. They just changed the way that they report. So it's no longer in a way that the CDC recognizes it. If they did, Massachusetts would be completely blue as well. And here's the other diseases, Lyme disease throughout the entire New York area, Borrelia miyamotoi, also mostly through New York, anaplasmosis, babesiosis. You might have it's coming. I live in Albany. We're Grand Central for all of it, and Powassan virus. It's pretty rare, but these are the counties where it has been diagnosed. And it's not just one disease per tick. There was a program where people would send them their ticks and they would test them for the different diseases. So this one tick that came in was carrying the diseases for Lyme disease and anaplasmosis and Powassan virus and babesiosis. A single tick bite can really, really wreck your day. All right, hopefully at this point, I have convinced you that you do not want to get bit by a tick. So I call this healthy paranoia. The paranoia part, because I want you to be concerned. I really want you to make sure that you do what it takes to not get bit by a tick. But I balance that with healthy, because locking yourself in your house and never stepping outside or only staying in the middle of parking lots is not healthy. We need to be able to get out there, enjoy our trails, enjoy our beautiful state. So next up, yes, you can absolutely protect yourself. So let us get into that. In this portion, you're gonna, a lot of this you've heard before. I'm not really going to be telling you anything new. What I will tell you is that there is no one thing that you can do that is going to protect you from ticks all the time. So I discovered this during COVID, the Swiss cheese model. Basically, what this is telling you is that everything has some gaps in it that will allow the ticks to be able to get through that and to be able to bite you. But the more things that you do, the less likely it is that you are going to be bit by a tick. So we'll just go in recognizing you're not going to do all of it all of the time. But if you do what you can in any given moment, you're going to protect yourself more. So first strategy, avoiding tick areas. They pay me to say this. Those tick areas are where also all the really fun stuff is going on. So are there things that we can do to avoid tick areas? Yeah, there is. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But we have to put it on the list. So when we're thinking about how to avoid ticks in these tick areas, let's remember how ticks are hunting. They're questing. They're hanging on to low vegetation, waiting for you to brush by. So if we're going to go out on a trail, we can pick trails that are wider than others. So let's say we show up at a place and we're wearing, sandals and shorts. Some trails in a given area might be more manicured than others. And if we're not dressed to protect ourselves against tick bites or mosquitoes, or poison ivy, then we should try to pick trails where we're less likely to brush up against vegetation. And in this group of trails that I'm highlighting here, as we go from left to right, you can see we're getting more and more tick risky. But that one on the right, incredibly tick. There's no way you can walk on that trail without brushing up against vegetation. That trail leads to my favorite trout hole. So I am not giving up what I love to do because of these guys. Also, one of my favorite spring activities is going out and taking pictures of spring ephemerals. So I am there in the springtime, lying on my stomach, taking pictures of these flowers. I can't really think of any tick riskier behavior. And I'm not getting ticks when I'm doing this. So what am I doing to protect myself? Well, step one is I'm dressing to exclude. And this, you've heard this before. We're going to wear light colored clothing. And the purpose behind that is because the ticks can be seen. It's not that they will prefer dark colors over light colors. It just gives us the chance of seeing if there's actually a tick crawling up our leg or not. And you can see that one moving up there. It's moving kind of slowly, so you've got time before it reaches skin. But it's moving fast enough that if you're paying attention, it might catch your attention. We're also going to take those light colored pants and we're going to tuck them into our socks, because if a tick is crawling up us, then it's not going to be able to go up the inside of our pants and thus aiming for the warm, dark, moist places of the body. It's going to have to go up to our waist. And if our shirt is tucked in, then it has to keep crawling up. At that point, it might give up and just drop off, which would be wonderful. And if it doesn't, if it does actually reach skin, now it's up in your neck region. And that's just a much, much easier place for us to look for ticks than some of the way more complicated geography that we have down south on our bodies. So we want to seal ourselves up. Basically, the idea is that we want to prevent the ticks from actually reaching skin. I had not worn shorts in years and I missed it a lot. And then I discovered these mosquito netting pants. It's the same idea. It is keeping the ticks from being able to reach my legs, and I can actually feel the breeze again. So the idea again is not to wear pants that are tucked in. The idea is to prevent ticks from reaching our body. So what does that look like for you? And that's a decision that you can make. So exclusion is something that we can do. If we want to up our game, we can then use repellents that we can apply to bare skin. So these are the things that they confuse the tick's sensory organs so that they don't see us as a host. There are 4 products that have been proven to work against ticks. We have DEET, the repellent upon which all other repellents are compared. We have picaridin, IR3535, which is the active ingredient in Skin So Soft, and then oil of lemon eucalyptus. Each of these have instructions on them. Some of the instructions are going to include, do not apply to skin that you are going to put clothing over. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know why they have made that recommendation, but the company that makes the product and the EPA both came to the conclusion that the product is safer if you're not putting clothes on it. So I'm going to follow those directions, and I hope that you will as well. Oil of lemon eucalyptus. People really like the sound of that because they're looking for something that's more natural. And as I said, this has been proven to work. However, in order for it to work against ticks, you need to apply it every hour. If you are not going to apply your skin repellent every hour, then it's really not the product for you, and you'd want to choose something else. So choose your products, read the instructions, follow the directions, and reapply as necessary. You'll also notice with the DEET and the picaridin that there are percentages on there. And the higher the percentage, the longer it is supposed to last, but there is no benefit to going above 30%. So don't get 50, 70, 100% DEET. You're just exposing yourself to a higher concentration of chemicals than necessary. Stick with 30% or below. The less the percentage, the more often you're going to need to apply it. All right. Let's remember that ticks are really small. So this is a picture of those six-legged larvae working their way through a sock. So we can actually armor ourselves with permethrin-treated clothing. And there's two ways that we can do this. One is a do-it-yourself method where you can buy a product. You can follow those instructions really carefully. You're bringing your clothes outside, spraying them down just until it changes color. You're not drenching them. You're letting it dry. Depending on how dry it is that day, how sunny it is that day, that might be 2 hours, it might be 6 hours. Once it's completely dry, that product has bound to the cloth and it's going to last for up to 6 weeks or 6 washes, depending on the product. There's the products that are most available out there. One's in a yellow bottle, one's in an orange bottle, one's in a blue bottle. The yellow and orange bottles are 6 weeks or 6 washes, whichever comes first. The blue bottle is 2 weeks or 2 washes, whichever comes first. So I recommend that you save your money and get the orange or the yellow bottle. You can also wash these clothes with your regular laundry. The other option that you have for permethrin treated clothing is you can buy it already treated, or if you have clothes that you use, these are your hiking clothes, you can send them to be professionally treated. These last for, they say the life of the garment, or up to 70 washes. This comes with a pesticide label. They will tell you not to wash these clothes with your regular laundry. So I know I'm not going to do that. So I'm a do-it-yourself person because I know myself. You know you. If you're going to separate those clothing, then I would encourage you to consider the professionally treated clothing because it'll be cheaper and less effort over the long run. I do want to throw in here that I've seen plenty of things out there on how to dilute your own permethrin and be able to smothe their clothing. Please don't do this because it does not have the ingredient in there that causes it to bind to the cloth. So we don't know how long it lasts. We don't know that it's not being absorbed into the skin. Use the regular product. It costs $16. It lasts me for an entire year. Well worth the investment. And just a reminder that even this, the permethrin treated clothing, has been found to be the most effective way, but it has holes in it too. So part of that is how else are you using it? So this was a project where they took graduate students and they put ticks on them. Some of the students were wearing untreated clothing and some of them were wearing treated clothing. And these were t-shirts and shorts and short socks. And you can see that where the clothing was not, ticks were still being attached. So even if you're wearing permethrin treated clothing, you still might want to add in the skin repellents or wear longer clothing. No matter what kind of clothing you're using, after coming inside, you're going to want to throw it into the dryer because that dry heat is their enemy. Ticks will survive the wash-dry cycle because there's enough moisture in that system. But if you take your clothes and you immediately put them into the dryer, once it reaches 120 degrees, all bets are off for the tick. They're dead, and you don't need to worry about them in your clothing. And while they're tumbling around, you're naked. So this is the time that you want to do your tick check. We recommend that you do this in the shower for 2 reasons. One is if you have a tick that's crawling on you, it has not yet attached, and it brushes off. You would like that to happen at the bottom of your shower as opposed to on your bedroom carpet. The other thing is you can get your hands nice and soapy, and you can then run your fingertips over the parts of your body that you just can't see, like the back of your neck or under your armpits. So really focus on those warm, dark, moist places of the body and feel if there's a lump there that just wasn't there before. And if you see something or you feel something, you can then get out your magnifying lens and mirror and see if that new something has legs on it. So you're going to want to check the belly button, between the toes, behind the knees, the groin area, between your fingers, basically warm, dark, tighter, moist places. And we're going to encourage you to do this every day, because if you missed one, it's still attached for a long time. Ideally, you're going to want to get it off as quickly as possible so that it doesn't have the chance to transmit most of these diseases. But even if it's on you for 4 days, any diseases have definitely been transmitted, but at least you knew you were bit by a tick. And this is information that you can, provide to your doctor. So every day it's getting bigger. So even if you weren't outside yesterday, still do your tick check. Just make it part of your daily routine. All right, let's say that you do find one and it's attached. This is a reminder of what we're up against. And there's a lot of tools out there to get it off. So some of the things you'll hear is you want to burn it off, you want to smother it. There's one where you put the drop of the liquid soap in there and you take a Q-tip and you twirl it around and around and around with the idea that you're unscrewing the tick, with the main purpose of that you're not leaving the head behind. So anything that you do to a tick that might distress it, and you can think, would I want this to happen to me? If you might be distressed, the tick is going to get distressed, and a distressed tick starts salivating a lot more. So it's going to put a lot more of those 1,000 chemicals that we don't know what they do into your body, and possibly, depending on how long it's been attached, a greater surge of any diseases that they are carrying. So what we recommend is very, very pointy tweezers. This allows us to grab it right where it meets the skin. So we're not squeezing the body at all. So I've got a couple of videos of what that looks like. I think we have that. Come on. That. Oh, here we go. So here's those you're going to look for tweezers that you're going to be convinced you would not be able to get through airport security. And you can see how locked in it is. It takes quite the tug to get out of there, but firm, gentle pressure is going to cause the tick to release. And this is a nymph. So this is the one that's the size of the poppy seed. Same exact tweezers. You're going to see how much larger those tweezers look compared to the size of this tick. But we're still, with that point, able to grab it where it meets. We're not squeezing that body. And then the recommendation is to put it into a vial or plastic bag, and label the date and have it identified, because the different ticks are going to carry different diseases. You can bring this to a local cooperative extension office. You can send pictures to have this identified. Because again, the different ticks carry different diseases. So you want to know what the species was. Again, this is information you're going to want to provide to your doctor. And we have this information on our website so that you can bring this with you to a doctor's office if you start to feel sick after getting bit by a tick, and need to see your physician. I want to encourage you to download the Tick app. This is a free app. It's been put out by Columbia University and the University of Wisconsin-Madison and Michigan State University. We're also partnering in it. This is going to help to remind you to do a lot of these tick prevention things. It's going to ask you if you did it. If you get a tick on you, you can take a picture and send it, and they will let you know what kind it is. This is actually a citizen science project where we're gathering information on what people are doing, where they're going, and what they're not doing when they get a tick, to help to target our future education efforts. So please consider doing that. And then personal perfection. We're going to do as many of these things as we can. Avoid habitat, dress to exclude, apply repellents to our skin, wear permeation treated clothing, do that daily tick check, proper tick removal. We can add protecting our pets against ticks. People that have pets, dogs especially, are 3 times more likely to get a tick than people that don't have dogs. Putting the clothes in the dryer, all of these things together, the more that you do, the more protected that you are going to be from these ticks. So again, you do not want to get bitten by a tick, but you can protect yourself. So protect yourself and go and enjoy those trails. I have thrown a ton of information at you. This and more can be found on our website, don'tgettickedny.org. And you can also find us on multiple social media platforms. And let us get into questions.
Well, thank you. And there is a little bit of dialogue in the chat about the washer versus dryer. If anybody had any more questions about that.
I think
So
with the washer and dryer, the questions that came up were some of our hiking clothes really don't do well in the dryer. So
I have
don't wanna
asked
do
about
that.
this with the people that run the fabric program at Cornell University. And what they told me was that mostly you're going to get that shrinkage when it goes from wet to dry. So if the clothes are dry and you put them in the dryer, then you shouldn't see that impact on the clothes.
Right. But a lot of us, we come back pretty sweaty and wet from some hikes in the summer, and we put our clothes in, and that's probably not a good idea. Plus, one of the questions I brought up is it's kind of gross. Like you're putting dirty clothes in a clean dryer is how I look at it. Like
I get that. I do. So this is one of those recommendations that you can take it or leave it. It's one of the things that you can do to better protect yourself. What I definitely would not do is put your sweaty clothes in the hamper right next to your bed, because there's enough moisture in that system for the ticks to survive. So at least get them away from where you're going to be. Your house, if your house is 85% humidity, then you have way bigger problems than whether a tick's going to survive in there. So yeah, if you're in tick risky areas, take the clothing and put them away from where you're going to be sleeping.
What about hanging them out in the sunshine on a line outside and it's sunny out?
That can definitely help. That can absolutely help. There's the risk of introducing ticks to your yard. So
what tick would have a red dot on it? Is that the deer tick?
So the black-legged tick does have that round or reddish abdomen. The female does.
Okay.
So yeah, the adult female black-legged ticks or deer ticks are often known by their reddish color.
Okay. Anybody else have other questions? I know this is a topic that makes me itchy and really wants me to go shower, but it is something that I think most of us have experience with.
There is one question in the chat. Will climate change the life cycle of the tick? That's a good question.
So I don't believe that it's going to change the life cycle. What it is going to do is allow some of these more southern ticks to move north. And that's what we've certainly seen with the Lone Star tick and the Gulf Coast tick. Both of these used to be much farther south. We are seeing more survival because of the weather. Like this was a perfect summer for the ticks. It was so wet for them. They're very happy. And because of that, I was actually finding way more black-legged tick nymphs in the late summer than I've ever found before. because they were happily able to continue on searching for something to feed on because there was enough moisture in the system. Any other questions?
The it's to me it's like such a creepy topic, but so many people that I hike with introduce me to other products, and they're like, "Oh, this is really good for ticks," and it's like has nothing to do with what you talked about tonight. And
And
I know there's people that are very they don't want to like poison their body, and when I say DEET, they tell me that's poison or permethrin, but I don't know how to answer them.
so oftentimes what I will tell people is, it's not, we're not weighing the risks of putting a chemical on our body versus being completely healthy and happy. What we need to consider is that it's putting this heavily researched product on our body compared to getting these tick-borne diseases and needing to take an incredibly strong antibiotic that we put into our mouths. I'm as motivated to not get bit by a tick because I never want to go on doxycycline again. It was awful.
Yeah. Really screws
so
up your
so those
stomach.
are the kind of risks that we're weighing.
So
Permethrin
Ellen,
itself, it has bound to the cloth, and so the absorption into the skin is not happening. It's really, that's the one that I recommend to people with kids all the time. Because I get it. I get not wanting to put something on their skin, especially if they're and they put things in their mouth stage.
and you know, most of us have some type of tick kits with us. Is there a way to get them directly from you with the really pointy tweezers?
So I'm going to throw that to Erin because I think, do you still have some left?
Yeah, I do believe we have some in our office at Mount Morris, so I will look into that.
Okay.
And I have everybody's emails, so I can, once I find out, I can send you guys an email and let you know.
And we do have another question about the gators. Like I know I have gators, but they're mostly, to me, I think they're mostly for mud because my gators, I have two pairs and both of them are black, which is complete opposite. But do they help prevent the ticks from climbing up because they're kind of slippery?
So tick gators actually have been treated with permethrin.
Okay.
So the gators that you're talking about that are for mud, they're going to help prevent the ticks from reaching skin somewhat. I would personally recommend treating those with permethrin, or getting yourself a pair of the tick gators that are pre-treated, and then it's just going to last for the life of them.
Awesome.
I think there was a second part of that question that I missed.
I don't know.
No? Okay.
No,
to
I think
admit,
we answered that.
I laugh at the life of the clothes statement, since I have plenty of clothes that are 20 years old. I don't believe it.
I'm with you. So that's why I kind of stress the 70 washes. Yes, I have clothes that are much older than that.
I'm wearing
And like I
clothes.
said, I like the do it yourself because I know I'm not gonna follow the label directions and separate those clothing out.
Yeah.
Oh, as itchy as I am, I think this is an awesome presentation, and I really appreciate Joellen for doing it. And I hope everybody got something out of it. And we really need to help prevent us from getting Lyme disease and all these other diseases that come with ticks. And we did record this, so it will be on our YouTube channel. And in November, I believe on the 16th, we will be doing a presentation concerning search and rescue. which is something none of us ever want to be the victim of or the recipient of. But search and rescue is super, super important. And we're going to talk about when it kicks in and why, and what they go through to help rescue people that are lost or hurt on trails. So watch for that announcement and register for that. And I really hope everybody enjoyed tonight as much as you can enjoy bugs. Aaron and Joellen, thank you both for putting this together, and thank everybody for attending.
Most important question, are you still going outside?
Yay, yes, yes. Oh, that's another question. I know the upstate lab, they stopped accepting ticks being sent in. Did they get money back? Can we send ticks back to them?
They have not been able to get funding back up to this point.
So